Welcome to the Pro Design Builder Podcast, a show where professionals and entrepreneurs share their stories, strategies, and secrets to building a thriving business and a successful life. I'm Sam, your host, as we dive deep into the world of life experiences and entrepreneurship. I'd like to thank our sponsors for today, the Pro Design Builder, which is a coaching and consulting firm for real estate investors who want to build spec home and multifamily units. The Pro Design Builder is not just about building a business, it's about building a vision and a life by design. As you know, the mission in foster care is never done. I've fostered a number of kids. I've adopted 2 kids I'm currently fostering now. If you ever feel led to give to our foster care initiative, there'll be a link in the description as well. Some of the things that we support is purchasing beds, buying meals, additional date nights for foster parents. So if you want to contribute to the mission work of foster care, that would be the way that you would do it. Without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest today, Jonnathan Truong, which is a senior pastor of God Manifests, a church that ministers that is based in Houston, Texas. God Manifests raises up, equips, and empowers leaders, churches, and ministries worldwide. I just want to say thank you for coming on today.
Hey, Sam, thank you for the opportunity.
All right. If you don't mind, just tell the people a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from. Yep.
Yeah. So currently, I'm in Houston, Texas. My mom and dad were born in Vietnam, although we're Chinese by heritage. I grew up Buddhist, and now I am a Christian. So I grew up Buddhist the first 24 years of my life, and never had an inkling thought of Jesus Christ or Christianity until Jesus literally invaded my life, showed me his love, answered my cry for help the first time I cried out for him.
Yeah. You have a very interesting story, and I caught a little bit of it, offline. So I'm excited to kind of dive into your story. And honestly, for me, I've never met a former Buddhist, so a lot of this stuff will be new to me. So if I ask questions that sound simple, that's why.
Yeah, absolutely. If you or any of your viewers have any questions, have them just drop a link or a comment, and I'll be glad to answer anything about Buddhism.
All right, perfect. So we like to start at the genesis of people's story,
Yeah.
So at the very beginning. So, what were you like as a kid? How did you grow up? Where did you grow up? And tell us a little bit about, your background.
Yeah, so I was born in Newark, New Jersey, but I moved to Houston, Texas when I was like 2 years old. But we were deeply enrooted in Asian culture, like Chinese culture, Vietnamese culture, as well as Buddhist culture. So I grew up in the Buddhist temple. My mom would bring my brother and I to the Buddhist temple every week, 2-3 times a week, where we would meditate and learn from the different Buddhas and monks that were at the temple at that time. But at 9 years old, so as a young child, I was. It says in the Bible that the gifts and calling of God are without repentance. So at a young age, all of a sudden, the people started noticing that I had the gift of foretelling things that were going to happen. I had words of knowledge of what people were doing. Like, for example, I was hanging out with my mother, and the head monk of her Buddhist temple was a Vietnamese temple. And he comes out, and I called him by name without even knowing his name. I called out his career before becoming a Buddhist monk. I called out his brother's name, and I called out where he was at in the world. And at that point, I was 9 years old. So as a young kid, I guess I was entrenched into the supernatural, but not in a biblical sense. I was really into the occult. From astral projection to meditation to third eye to opening third eye, and quickly I got really brought into the Buddhist world and began to train and activate people in these occultic things. Obviously, at the time, I didn't know they were occultic, but since becoming a Christian, I do now.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know much about Buddhist philosophy. So, what would you say is the key key philosophy of Buddhist, key teaching of Buddha. Yeah.
Yes. So every Buddhist believes in reincarnation. That means that your life today, when you pass away, you're not just going to heaven. You're going to reincarnate as another living organism, and then in your next life. And that's based off of your karma. That's based off of how you live your life currently. So if you live a life in what Buddhists believe is, if you live a life in, I guess, an evil life, you'll come back as an animal that's less desirable, like a cockroach, let's say, or something, right? Or a fly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But and then the whole goal of Buddhism is to reach two things: enlightenment and nirvana. So basically, it's blowing out the Buddhists believe that the end of suffering comes at the end of our desires. So you have to stop all desires. Our desires are what produces suffering, is what the Buddhist mantra is. And to do so, you basically begin to eliminate things from your life. That's why the Buddhist monks, the real Buddhist monks, they live in a very isolated state where they're free from distraction. They're spending most of their time meditating or doing good works. They believe in karma, which is so karma. A lot of Christians, I've heard them say this after I became a Christian. There's like, oh, it's the same thing as reaping and sowing. Actually, it's not. No. So in Christianity, you reap what you sow. In karma, if you sow evil, if you sow evil, you have to sow a certain amount of good, typically double, triple, quadruple the amount of good, to try to erase that evil with no guarantee. So the beauty of reaping and sowing in the Bible, in grace, the grace message of Jesus Christ in the Bible is we're reaping something we didn't sow. Like Jesus came and died for us. And that's the difference. Like where it's work-based. I can tell you as a Christian now, I'm always shocked when I see the measure of legalism within the church, like work-based salvation. Well, Jesus didn't come to say, do all these things and get saved. Jesus says, receive me. Those who confess with their mouth and believe in their heart will be saved. And so in Buddhism, everything was work-based. It's amount of times you can meditate. It's you reaching enlightenment. It's you reaching nirvana. And I also was a Taoist, where it's a Buddhist philosophy or Asian philosophy we lived under.
Okay, I think that was a great explanation and kind of gave me the baseline of where things began for you. So, walk me through what your childhood looked like as a Buddhist.
So what's interesting is we all believe that Buddhists are peaceful in nature. Not all Buddhists are peaceful in nature. My mother was not a peaceful woman at all. She was what Asians call a tiger mom. She would actually beat my brother and I senseless all the time. At 11 years old, while she was disciplining me, is what she said today. Like she literally confronted me the other day and said, "Hey, when you explain how I accidentally beat you to death and killed you, you can't say I was abusing you. You have to say I was disciplining you and I accidentally killed you." She actually said that to my family and my aunts and uncles. Everyone was there, 30 of us sitting there. And she was confronting me in front of everyone and saying that wasn't abuse, that was discipline. So growing up, I was highly disciplined. I was taught that love only came through performance, whether it's performance in school, performance in sports, performance in martial arts. I was deeply entrenched in martial arts as well. And so here's a perfect example of that. When I was like 7 or 8 years old, I went out to the playground. A 12-year-old, that's a huge difference in size. A 12-year-old picked a fight with me. Well, I fought him. I was probably up to his chin. I fought him and got whooped. I went back, bloodied and bruised. My mom's first question was, "What happened?" I said, "I got in a fight." Her next question was, "Did you win?" And I shook my head, no. Before I could tell her this boy was double my size, she said, you're not allowed to come home or eat unless you come back with a win.
Wow.
So she sent me back out there. An hour later, she finds me out there bloodied, and my brother picked the fight and he got beat up. And my mom just suddenly saw that this boy, this 12-year-old was huge. And she was like, he was taller than my mother. It's probably the size of my brother. And then so she pulled me aside and actually said to me, she was very violent. She says, when you fight someone that size, she didn't care about my injuries. She said, when you fight someone that size, you have to equal the playing field by grabbing a weapon.
Mm.
And so that's really the type of background I grew up in. But outside of family, in trauma and abuse, like my dad was big on sexual abuse, and he was entrenched in, not entrenched, but he was addicted to pornography and gambling and things. So my brother and I were really exposed to all these defiling things growing up. So on one hand, we were into all these defiling things at home, but on the other hand, my mom would take me to the Buddhist temple week after week, day after day, and having and hoping that I would accept the calling of becoming a Buddha within Houston.
Yeah. Yes. So there's actually quite a bit of relatability in some of the things that you shared. I think, naturally, kind of like what your mom was saying, she was disciplining you, not beating you senseless, right? And I have some, unfortunately, I have some relatability in this particular area in the relationship and how, our mom disciplined us or beat us, right? And I came to this realization, and I had to confront this, more recently, 2021. I went to therapy for the first time. And what the what was the precipice of me going to therapy was my wife had two friends, and for some reason I just didn't like these friends, right? But they were similar in personality. They were strong, they were dominant, they a little controlling as well. So all of these traits made me like not like them, right? And I just remember sitting down one time, and I'm stewing over these people, right? And then I asked myself, why don't I like these people? What's the reason? What have they done to me? And I realized I I didn't have any reason not to like them, right? They didn't do
Mhm.
anything to me. And then I was talking to my wife. We made the connection. It was like, that's the relationship with your mom.
Mm.
They resemble this figure to you, so you naturally had this feeling towards them that was terrible, because the
Yeah.
relationship wasn't because of the way that she beat you.
Yeah. Yeah. So in ministry, we call that triggers. Like
Triggers, it
sometimes
definitely triggered.
yeah, sometimes people will come to me. Like for instance, I didn't realize how badly abused I was until my wife found me one day just extremely depressed and really triggered with things that are happening at work. Because prior to becoming a full-time pastor, I ran a marketing firm, which I still run, and then a publishing company. But she
Mhm.
saw me just suddenly becoming overwhelmed when I'm typically not overwhelmed with things. And then so she said, maybe you want to speak to a Christian counselor. So she called this guy who specializes in speaking to pastors who are suicidal, because I shared
Mhm.
I was suicidal then.
Yep.
So I sat down with him. Then he has me document all the various types of abuse I went through. And to my shock, he said, it's in my book, like the various abuses in chapter 4, but it was so diverse. He said, I was one of the most abused um, pastors he's ever met. And he was shocked that I was working as an executive in oil and gas companies and major law firms around the world. He was shocked that I was producing like the content I was producing still. And he was shocked that I was functioning based off of the trauma. And so he
Mhm.
was really working me through on how to heal from the trauma. And I think a lot of us men, we bottle it up because women
We
are
do.
encouraged to share their emotions. Young
Mhm.
men are not. But now when we encounter young men who've gone through any measure of trauma, we encourage them to share and share openly, because we want them to grow up to be healthy young men and healthy grown-ups
Yeah.
eventually too.
No, for sure. I mean, obviously, I have a lot of relatability in this particular area because of some of my experiences, and up until 2021, once I caught this thing, right, this trigger that came from that relationship, and what spurred from that, it made me look back. I was like, what else have I made adjustments for that I haven't really calibrated, in my head, right? And then I realized that I went through a ton, right? A ton of trauma, complex trauma.
Yeah.
And now I realized I wouldn't be where I am today in regards to fostering and adopting and supporting children in the way that I do, if I didn't go through some of these experiences. So now I share openly, even though some of them, similar to you, are very deep in nature. I share very openly, because I want anybody else that has experienced these types of things to not feel alone, and that's
Yeah.
kind of what some of the podcasting, the sharing is truly all about. You mentioned to me, that you said your mom beat you to death. Walk
Yeah.
me through what led up to that and what happened.
Well, growing up, like I shared about my father was addicted to pornography. He always, according to him, before he passed away like 3 years ago, he's probably slept with 2,000 prostitutes, he said, in his
Oh
life.
wow.
So this is from Vietnam, when my mom and him were dating, all the way to the day he died, that he was constantly pursuing prostitutes and sleeping with people and spending all this money on gambling. So my mom was perpetually frustrated and perpetually angry. So any little thing that my brother and I would do, she would flip out
You got the brother.
and instantly go into a rage. I think at 4 years old, she sat down with me. She taught me how to fry an egg, how to boil instant noodles. And so this is so the reason why was, she says, hey, if mommy doesn't wake up one morning, this is how you cook for yourself, she said. And then she says, and if mommy doesn't wake up for 2 mornings, call 911. So she was basically preparing me. I didn't know this until I got older, preparing me for her suicide. Now being older and speaking to her now, she says, yeah, she was extremely suicidal my entire life because of how my dad treated her. So the day I died, she ended up, I was playing a video game. Back then it was Sega Genesis. I'm 46 years old. So I was playing the Sega Genesis, and my mom says, hey, Jonathan, it's time to eat. Put up your game. I just turned off the TV, left my game on, and put my control up. Well, my mom found out and always overreacted. So she began to just beat me. And she beat me for about 3 hours with the baseball bat, with the frying pan, with metal spatulas, with the dictionary, and she would just hit me and hit me and hit me. It was the worst I've ever had. I've been in a lot of fights in my life, brawls. It was the worst beating I've ever experienced. Even fighting like 12 or 15 people at that time. Like my mom's beating was the worst because I couldn't fight back. And she began to beat me, and all of a sudden I tried to run outside and I tripped and fell by the baseball bats, and that's when she picked up my baseball bat and just began to hit me. And then I remember she held it up as high as she could over her head, and as she came down with both hands, I was gone. And I had this out of body experience, which I always thought was fake growing up. But I had this out of body experience where I went through like 3 stories of my apartment, and I was in the midair. Then I heard a voice, and this time, I was Buddhist, so I heard a voice in midair and said, "Jonathan, your mom needs you. Go back." I didn't even know I died. I didn't know anything. All I knew is I was out of my body. So when I looked down, I actually I saw my mom curled up on the couch, no longer above me with a baseball bat, and all of a sudden I fell out of the sky, woke up. According to my mother, I was dead for over 10 minutes. She said 10 to 15 minutes. I was laying there lifeless. She said she checked my pulse on my wrist, my pulse in my jugular vein. She checked everything, and she said I was limp and dead. And she was, so I found her curled up on the couch, just bawling and crying. So I crawl over to her, grab her feet, and she squeals squeals like a burglar was in the house, like our ghost is grabbing her. And she looks at me and she said, Jonathan, you're alive. Jonathan, you're alive. Mommy is sorry. Mommy will never hit you again. And she never did. She said, Mommy will never hit you again. Mommy will never hit you again. But I had this major headache for weeks because I think I had a concussion and all these things. And my mom kept on checking up on me throughout the night, the first 2 or 3 nights, making sure I was breathing, taking me out to eat, and just guilt driven, guilt stricken. But that's what happened. That's how I died. She beat me for so long. I was dead. My brother came out, saw me. My mom threatened my brother not to say anything. She literally admitted, because we grew up in gangs in the street, and so did she. She admitted she was trying to figure out, like, rationalize what was the best thing to do with my body so she wouldn't get in trouble.
Wait, were you first off, how old were you, and then where were you guys living when this happened?
Yeah, so I'm living in an area called Alief, Houston, Texas. So that's what you say that to any Houstonian, they'll say that's the ghetto.
Okay.
I was living in housing projects there,
Yeah.
and I was just it was just before I turned 12.
Hmm. Right before you turned 12.
Yeah, so I was a small kid. For example, my freshman year in high school, I was 4'10". So
Hmm.
at 12 years old, you can imagine how tiny I was.
Yeah. I mean, surprisingly, once again, I could relate, right? But the difference is, I had this near-death experience when I was in Haiti, and it was a accident that kind of brought this on, right? So we were playing next to a pot of beans, and this girl pushes me into the pot of beans, and then my arm falls in, and my chest is burned, my arm is burned, and the skin kind of falls down my fingertips, and they rush me to, one hospital, and then there's no beds available. They rush me to a second hospital, and there's no beds available. And my body went into shock, and I died into my godmother's arms. And to this day, my mom says, like, if they would have found a bed for you, you would have been dead, because what happened after that is, in her arms, she just kept praying for me, just praying
Wow.
for me, praying for me, praying for me, and praying for me. And they said at one point, someone said, give us his body. And she was like, no, what do we tell his parents? My parents weren't in the area, when this happened. And she just kept praying, praying, praying until God brought me back. So for me, it creates this thing in my head. It's almost like a like a ticking clock, right? That I can't turn off,
Yeah.
because I know and I appreciate, time for what it is, and I know how unguaranteed time is. Do you have anything like that?
Oh yeah. I could tell you that I always had an urgency in my life. And I think which drives me nuts when I meet people who aren't urgent with life, because
Right.
life is short. I can
Hmm.
tell you, I'm 46 today, but when I hit 30, the last 16 years was a blur. Like
Hmm.
as soon as I hit 30 years old, the last 16 years really flew by quickly. And my goal is to serve God with everything I have, from my physical being to with my voice, with the platforms we have, to my finances, and like right now, even with our church is in our house right now. There's 50 members
Yeah.
that we meet in our home.
No, for sure. I hit this gear now that I am 100% on purpose, right? And what that means is, the vision that God has given me, and supporting that vision and growing in a way that allows me to speak about foster care, speak about challenging, times, and growing up in different places, and how that the grace of God really helped me kind of get through that. And for me, during this time of challenge, I was young. I was 8, but I found Christ. I gave my life to Christ then. Reason being is that was the only thing that made sense, right? Because everything else around me, whether it was the relationship at home, whether it was being in this crack infested neighborhood, whether it was the treatment of how, kids, treated me in school, getting jumped and getting spit on and all this other stuff. Nothing else made sense. But when I encountered this relationship with Christ, it made sense to me. And I was kind of like, I want more of that. Right.
Yeah, yeah,
So, I was lucky that I had this experience. I mean, life still was very crazy after that, but I at least found a source of peace,
yes,
that I could rely on. So, all right. So you're around 12 when this happened. So, I guess I would just allow you to just continue, with your story.
Yeah, so I can say 12 years after that incident, up to that point, my mom would beat me once or twice a week, similar types of beatings. She never killed me. That was the only time she's ever killed me. She threatened my life a few times, but after killing me once, I believed her. Call me crazy.
For sure.
I was like, "Hey, mom, I believe you." She says, "If you come home doing this, I'll kill you." And I'm like, "I believe you."
Yeah.
So I'm not going to do that. But all of a sudden, 12 years later, here I am in college, still a Buddhist. I was teaching martial arts at a local Buddhist temple. Not as devout anymore. I wasn't meditating as much anymore. I wasn't because none of that really brought me peace. And everything in my life just began to fall apart. So this is 12 years later is my salvation. Everything in my life was falling apart. I think we've all been there. It's a lot easier when things falls apart as a Christian because we have Jesus. Whereas then I heard the name Jesus. I watched the movie, the Jesus movies that came out there in Easters once or twice. I didn't know Jesus was a real man. I didn't know Jesus was the Son of God. Just to be fair, those movies didn't do Jesus justice at all. So here I am now in college, my final semester in college. I was a graphic design major. And I just woke up and everything was falling apart. My dad lost $400,000. We were $200,000 in debt. He wanted me to drop out of college my last semester. My mother wanted me to drop out of college. I was basically ready to fall out of my program, my graphic design program, which you had to compete to get in. I competed against 180 students that 2 years before for 24 spots. So it's a very competitive program. And I was done. And I get all the way to school. Everything's falling apart. The professor sat down with me same day and asked me if I thought about changing majors because I was a major disappointment. That I didn't look passionate about, designing at all anymore. And so I went home ready to kill myself. And I was ready to just end it all. And I couldn't figure out the best way of killing myself because I grew up in gangs and guns and violence. So I was like, should I rob a bank? Should I rob a convenience store? Should I run my car off the highway? What's the best way of killing myself? If I'm gonna go down, I might as well go down in flames. Yeah. And I get all the way home from college. I get in front of my computer. I had project to finish. I turned on my computer and I don't know, just before I turned on my computer, I find out that a close family friend had passed away, someone that we called uncle. And that was it. That was a straw that broke the camel's back. I was like done. And I told my mom, you know what? I'm just going to work on projects. I get in my my home office computer, turn it on, and I literally had nothing left to say. But what came out of my mouth was, God, why are you doing this to me? I've never spoken to God, never prayed to God. Wasn't expecting God to respond. So it just came out of my mouth. I said, God, why are you doing this to me? I said, is it because I've been ignoring your voice all my life? Because there was always this external voice because I wasn't saved or filled with the Holy Spirit that was trying to prevent me from doing stupid things my entire life. Yeah. Things that were defiling, things that would ruin me, things that will derail my life. And I always push past that voice. So I'm saying this to the voice I've been hearing, and I assumed it was God. And I waited as the computer booted up, and I was hoping that God would hijack or hack my computer and type on my screen like in the movie Matrix. But nothing happened. And I'm staring at my computer screen, and I broke. After that point, I didn't cry. I just broke. My face hit the keyboard. I'm crying into the keyboard. And I said, of course, if you're real, God, of course you would ignore me too, because I'm a loser. And all of a sudden you hear the doorbell, 2 doorbells, and my mom's so I'm getting up, walking to my door to walk to my dad's office to shoot myself. So I literally said to God, if you won't answer me today, I'm done. It's over. So as I'm walking, there are doorbells, and my mom screamed, "Hey, Jonathan, there are 2 pretty girls outside. They must be your friends from school." Well, I was 24 years old, single, so I was excited to hear about girls, but my face was puffy from crying for that by an hour. I was feeling hopeless, so I told her, I said, "Hey, tell them to wait. I'm gonna go wash my face." So I'm washing my face, splashing cold water on my face. I rushed to the door, open it up. It was 2 Mormon girls standing there, just petrified in the ghetto. Two white Mormon girls, and I grew up in the ghetto, so I'm like, what are these girls doing in the ghetto? Why do they look petrified? I noticed their car was parked in the middle of the street, doors open, engine running, and I realized, oh, they must be They must be carjacked. They must be part of our carjacking.
With that setup, you're gonna get carjacked.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm thinking, these kids aren't getting carjacked. So I said, what happened? And they just shook their head and couldn't speak. And I said, let me know what happened. Because at this point, I'm thinking, well, I'm gonna kill myself. I might as well kill a carjacker before I die. Like I might as well end in a blaze of glory. Here's my opportunity. Then that girl in front of me says, you won't believe me, and started to turn away. I reach out and I grab her arm, her bicep, and then and I said, ma'am, just tell me what happened. And she says, we left a Bible study. In that very moment, I knew I must have prayed to the God of the Bible. And then she says, as we were driving past your house, we heard an audible voice inside of my car. And I'm thinking, you're getting carjacked. There's a man in your back seat. Because that happened in my neighborhood. They'll hide in the back seat and they'll carjack you. Yeah. And so I'm looking behind them now over their shoulder. And then I said, what happened next? And she said, I said, what did the voice say? She said, the voice said, stop the car and get out. I'm like, yeah, carjacking. And she said, I said, what did you do? She goes, we got out of the car. We got out. When I'm thinking smart, and I'm still looking like, why on earth is their car sitting there? It must be like a standard stick shift or something. Like I've seen carjackers in my neighborhood try to steal a car and it's stick shift. They leave it because they can't drive it. So I'm waiting. And all of a sudden I said, what happened next? She said, then we heard the same voice that was in our car outside of our car that said, to your right is a brown house. In a brown house is a little boy who has questions I need answers, which was the exact prayer I had to God. I said, God, I just have questions I need answers. And I paused and I made full eye contact with these two girls. I said, what? And then they said, I knew you wouldn't believe me. And I said, wait. You heard a voice? I think that voice you heard was God, I said. And she goes, what? And I said, who is in my house? Who did the voice say that was in my house? And she said, a little boy. And I started to bawl because I'm like, wait, the God of the Bible calls me a little boy. He knows me. And I said, I'm that little boy. Did you hear me pray? Because I didn't understand how Christianity worked. So here I am, like this was not in like the Buddhist playbook. So here I am hearing God of heaven and earth now speaking through these two girls who are Mormons. And I'm flipping out. So what's interesting is, so after all this happens, I said, hey, come in and teach me. They weren't allowed to teach because they had to teach only women. So they gave me the number to the church and said, we'll be in touch with you in a few weeks to get some men to come teach you. Well, fast forward, a few weeks came. I was about to start doing drugs again because everything was great up to that day. And I was like, I think I imagined that whole thing. Yeah, so I'm about to.
It didn't make sense that it would all come together like that.
Exactly. So I'm about to go to a drug party, which I set up. I paid for all the drugs. And I see their name on my push board and I tap their name. I said, whatever happened to them, God? Now I know never to challenge Jesus. But I said, whatever. Then all of a sudden my house phone rang and I paused and I'm all dressed up for a club, like to get high and meet girls. And I'm looking at my phone ringing on next to my bed. And I was like, and I picked it up. I looked at it and I said, God, if this is the same girls, I am yours forever. And I'm holding the phone to my chest. And I said, please don't be them. Because the idea of belonging to a God whom I didn't know at that time scared me. But I didn't know God was kind because the Christians I met were judgmental. They were harsh. They Bible beat me. Instead of because but the Bible says the kindness of God turns hearts to repentance. Well, I never experienced the kindness of God from the Christians that I knew. So I wasn't interested at that time. So I pick up the phone and she says, may I speak with Jonnathan Truong? And I was like, Truong. And she says, this is sister whatever. And I said, yeah, where have you been? And so she said, we're down the street. Can we come over and teach you the Bible? As long as I bring 2 or more girls, I can teach you. And I said, whoa, come on over. She comes over. I'm all dressed up, drenched in cheap cologne. And she looks at me and she's like, you don't have to dress up for a Bible study. And I said, for all due respect, I have no idea what a Bible study is. And I didn't know how to dress, but I didn't want to tell her I was about to go to a drug party. So I called all my friends and all my family members that were going to the party. And I said, y'all have fun on me. Just don't break anything in the hotel room that I just rented. But use up all the drugs, use up all the alcohol. I have a Bible study to go to. And they flipped out, like, Bible study. So now I think some of your people who are watching are like Mormons. So I'll fast forward 6 months. 6 months later, I get a call. The Bible study grew from 2 girls to 21 Mormons who are ages of 17 to 25. 21 of them were in this house. 8 of them get saved out of Mormonism. Like they encounter Jesus through a fresh convert. They encounter Jesus, and they realize the Jesus that's preached in the Mormon church is not the same Jesus of the Holy Bible.
Yeah.
And so they were excommunicated. They were shunned out of the Mormon church, and then they all moved. Those eight people who were kicked out of the Mormon church moved to Utah to evangelize Utah now.
Wow.
So people who are watching, I'm not a Mormon. I'm not promoting Mormonism, but I am saying God used Mormons to reach me, and then God used an ex-Buddhist to reach the same Mormons that reached me. So that's just God's goodness and kindness. Like God literally was like, wow, these 2 girls are lost. This Asian guy, Jonnathan, is lost. I'm going to use them to hear my voice and to lead each other to repentance. And then the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ. And that's what happened. All of a sudden we were saved. And then I began to read the Bible on my own and just not really understanding the church, never wanting to become a pastor. Today I'm a pastor of 8 years. I own marketing company still. I own a publishing company still. But here's an interesting thing about owning businesses. Before salvation, I was dyslexic. Severely dyslexic. That's why I was an artist. Most dyslexic people are good artists or creative. I couldn't read or write very well at all. When I read, I would get motion sickness. That's how bad the words would move. The moment I was saved and began to read the Bible, I realized that dyslexia was completely healed. No laying on of hands. All I said was yes to Jesus, open the Bible, and I was able to read the Bible. And then from there, I realized, wait, if I can read the Bible, can I read other things? And then God just began to basically train me up in the corporate world, and also then train me up to become a pastor.
Wow, that's a amazing story that God would use these Mormon girls to be able to kind of speak with you. I feel like there's a lot of situations like that where God will move and use different pieces to encounter you. So there was my wife and I wanted to start a family right away, right? And everything that we did, we couldn't have a baby, right? And then the years start to pile up, and the miscarriages pile up, and once you think that you've had enough miscarriages, next thing you know, we have an ectopic pregnancy, right? And the baby was healthy, had a strong heartbeat and everything, and it was just kind of just felt like we just really could not win to start this family. And I just remember this one lady comes up to me, and we're around year 7. I'm pretty defeated at this point, and it feels like there's a dark cloud over us, right, over our relationship. I think definitely it was a spiritual battle. And this lady comes up to me, and couldn't recognize her face today. She comes up to me, and then I told her something about getting ready to foster. And she said to me, she goes, I already know what's going to happen. Right. And then I looked at her, and I kind of rolled my eyes, just because, the season was so long. It was so hard. She's like, you're going to have a baby. You're going to get pregnant as soon as you bring the kids in the house. Right. Yeah. And then I was just kind of I'm just saying this now, and it kind of gives me goosebumps. But the month that we took in the kids after this, two kids, brother sibling group, December 3rd and December 28th, my wife got a positive test for our son Caden, right? And now I'm kind of replaying this back. I definitely was God's hand in there, but God will use different people to be able to kind of say, hey, I'm right there for you, right? And then we took that as confirmation that this is where we should have been all along, right? It took us so long to get to the point of taking these kids and fostering You know, we had a plan of starting our own family. That wasn't his plan. He wanted us to be faithful, take in the kids, and then that's what we did. And he granted us with our
Wow.
son, right? After that long
That's
time.
a beautiful testimony. And
That is.
you know, how gracious is God? Like now you're being Christ-like as a natural father, but also Christ-like as a foster and adoptive father.
For sure.
So that's amazing that you're able to bless so many young lives.
Yeah. It's near and dear to my heart, for sure. So, all right. So you encounter these Mormons. Now you're going to the church with them. Now the Spirit is starting to move inside you, and you're helping Mormons see, you know, Jesus. And then what happens from there?
Yeah. So this is how I found out. I'm sitting at home. We finished our Bible studies about 4 months into it, and they disappeared for 2 or 3 months. And I'm sitting there going, I lost all my friends. The Mormons won't even talk to me. And I'm like, that's so odd, because they're knocking on everyone's door, is what I'm thinking.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm studying the Bible on my own. All of a sudden, the phone rings. The lady who knocked on my door the first time, she called and she said, "May I speak with Jonnathan?" And she says, "This is," you know, she said her name, and I said, "Yeah." And I said, "Where have you been?" And she says, "We're in Utah. We just wanted to let you know that we're good, and because of you, we encountered the true Jesus, and we received true salvation and repentance, and now we're evangelizing, and we left the Mormon church." I was initially brokenhearted because I knew nothing about Mormonism, even up to that point. After 4 months of studying with them, I knew nothing about Mormonism.
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh my gosh, you left church because of me. Like I must be a terrible Christian. I just became a Christian." I was like, don't leave church because of me. I just came out of Buddhism. And they were like, no. They said the way you interpret the scripture as you begin to read it out loud, it breathed life into the scripture. And actually we felt like the Holy Spirit was on it. And we suddenly gained a greater understanding of how good and how loving God is, and that what we were in at that moment was false. And I still didn't understand that until years later, until I started like looking into like different types of beliefs. But then I started reading the Bible. So, you know, this starts off, this is how my marketing firm started off. Like I just graduated, all this happens, and I'm reading the Bible. I'm looking on Craigslist in the classified ads. I'm working for a national marketing firm here in Houston. Like I was I was the first ever intern, like paid intern, first intern ever, because they don't take interns because they were such a big firm. Yeah. But what they met me at a portfolio review, and they gave me an internship, paid me really well. So I'm finishing my internship. I'm looking on Craigslist and all of a sudden I see free office space for young graphic designer, marketing person with entrepreneurial spirit. And I was like, wow. Huh. So I wrote him an email. I said, I would like to get this free space. He gives me a call and he says, "Hey, this is Tim. You wrote me about the space. We got like 20 other people in it. Tell me about yourself." And I told him. He said, "Come on over." So I came over with my portfolio. I walk in with a suit that was like one size too big, baggy suit pants, because nothing was like tailored to me. And he takes one look at me and he goes, "Just leave your portfolio. I'll call you next week." Oh, his friend Mark walks out and he goes, "What's your name?" I said, "Jonnathan." He goes, "Ignore Tim. He's a really nice guy once you get to know him. He just stays really busy. Show me your work." So I show him my work. It turns out Mark is the son of the initial illustrator of Mike Esposito, the illustrator of the first illustrator for Spider-Man. So he's a comic book like fanatic, and he was a comic book writer, movie producer. So he's sitting there talking to me. I show him my portfolio and he goes, "This is all student work?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Whoa, you're exactly what we're looking for." And I'm like, "Well, can you convince Tim?" He goes, "Tim wants to give it to this 35-year-old, but you're 24. I think you're the guy we want to give it to. I'll convince him." And I was like, okay, whatever. So I leave, like thinking, there's no way. So I'm watching Spider-Man now with Tobey Maguire. I'm watching like I'm watching Spider-Man, and my phone keeps ringing, and I keep looking at it, and it kept on saying Mark Esposito. He since passed away, and I pick up, and I'm running out. And I'm like, "Hello," and he goes, "Hey, is that Spider-Man?" And I was like, "Yes, it's Spider-Man, but who is this?" She goes, "Mark." And I said, "I'll call you back. Finish the movie." And I'm like, No. What's going on? He says, "Oh, the space is yours." And I went, "What?" He said, "When can you move in?" I was like, "Right after the movie." Because at that point I was homeless. Like my dad had lost all his money. I'm living in my truck. He had no idea I was homeless. My boss at that time did not know I was homeless. I was living in my truck, showering in 24-hour fitness, and living out of a warehouse. Like I had a public storage. So I would go to the public storage, get my clothes, go to the gym, work out, take a shower, change, and go into work. So no one knew because I did everything at the gym. And so I move into my office, like literally move in. Like I slept in there, I lived in there, and so I get in there. I'm sitting down. So in Houston, Texas, there's a convenience store chain called HEB. It's one of the biggest chains. There's like 400 stores now all over the U.S. But anyways, I'm sitting there, no clients. He comes in, he goes, "Hey, what clients are you working on?" I said, "I have no clients." And he was like, "What?" I said, "I just wanted an office so I can start a business." And he said, "Wow." And then the phone rings. HEB calls me and says, "Hey, we were referred to you from your church. Do you build websites?" And I was like, "Absolutely," which I didn't. And I said, because I didn't, but I was like, I do now. So I reached out and I found a programmer. I'm a designer. So I started partnering with my programmer. I got a business partner the next day. And all of a sudden my business grew initially from just myself with no clients. In 6 months, I had 12 clients, and my business within a year was bringing over $1 million in revenue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Within a year of that, of me getting the office, and to a point where I merged with all the companies that was all office together. We did multiple companies. I began to merging with all of them all, absorbing them all, and then just bringing in business, and which is crazy. Here I am, a poor kid from the hood who was just homeless, grew up in the housing projects, into drugs, into alcohol, just get saved. When within a year and a half of salvation, my business is bringing over $1 million. I wasn't bringing $1 million. You're a business owner, so you know, like I brought it.
Business owner, you know,
because I brought in like 60,000 in profits because I didn't understand how to bid on projects. No one taught me. I went into blind, and God just began to breathe on it, and the started landing like. You know, in Houston, we have one of the largest churches in the world is in Houston. Well, they called me and they hired me for a website. And all of a sudden, all these ExxonMobil, Shell, all these big companies began to call me out of the blue because they were recommending me to each other. And so I'm landing all these oil and gas companies, all these law firms, and I became a copywriter, I became a programmer, and then within 6 months, I grew from one person to 12 employees. We started doing video production and all these things. And social media was like in its infancy. So we were doing social media posts and creating things for clients. And it was so surreal because I was so young and I didn't know what I was doing. But all I knew is God was on this.
Yeah, for sure.
And I was like, man, God loves me so much that he's breathing on this business. So I started giving money away as money was coming in. I was giving it away because I didn't know. I barely read the Bible because I was so new. I wasn't a member of one church. I attended 4 or 5 services every week because I was afraid of getting back into my old life.
Yeah.
So anytime there was a night service somewhere, I showed up. You know, every single church, like everyone was like, "You're everywhere." I'm like, you don't understand how I grew up. I have to stay busy so I don't get back into drugs and alcohol and women again. Like I just can't get back in that lifestyle. Yeah. But it was just so surreal that how my design studio just exploded. Now I'm a one-man show because I'm a pastor. So I do everything on the side just for extra cash to be able to support our church. We're looking for a building now. I also I have a publishing company. Like I published my book in 2019 and like multiple large publishing companies wanted to publish me, but their ask was so high. They said, "We'd love to publish you, but you have to be able to sell 15,000 sold copies, 5,000 sold copies." And it was unreal. There's no way I could have sold that even with my social media following. And I was like, no, there's impossible. So my wife looks at me and says, "You write for a living. You've won awards for copywriting, for journalism." And I said, "Yeah, journalism it's different than editing a book." And she says, "You won awards for designing. You won awards for website development. You've done video editing. You've done all these things. What are these companies offering that you can't do?" She said. And I was skill wise, nothing. I said size wise, everything. I was like, they're the main brands. Like, I'm not going to just launch a business on the whim. And she said, "Well, pray about it." So the next morning I woke up and I was thinking, you know what? she's right. So my church is called God Manifest. So I was like, I can't think of another name. So I just called it God Manifest Publishing. And I built a website that morning. I woke up at 3 a.m. So at 8 a.m., my website was finished. The same website that's up today.
Yeah.
I just changed out the exactly same website. I wrote all the content because that's what I did for a living. And she comes out and I said, okay, we need to go get our DBA, our LLC, our bank account, and all these things. She's like, wait, for what? And I said, God Manifest Publishing. She goes, so when you're going to build a website this week? And I'm like, no, I finished. And I said, I need you to log in and edit it. So she logs in and she goes, it's done. I was like, it's done. So all of a sudden we went and got all that stuff that day. And the next day I went live with my book. Well, 6 months later, this publishing company was supposed to be just to publish my books. I wasn't planning on like publicizing it. So 6 months later, people started calling me. They're like, hey, I love your website. How much to publish my book? And I went, we don't publish anyone else's book. We publish my books. And he was like, oh, that's a shame. I would love to work with you. And then 2 or 3 months later, another person called me. So that first year, I had like 6 calls. People were like, I know who you are. I watch your videos. I would like you to publish my book. And I was like, and I'm talking to my wife about it now, a little frustrated, which is like, I didn't even like being a man of God. I didn't even recognize God was breathing on it. So I'm sitting there talking to my wife. I was like, I'm going to turn off this website. Like everyone keeps calling us. We're not a publishing company. And Olivia is my wife. And Olivia looks at me and goes, but what if we are? What if that's what God's doing? And she said, what if you charge like a fraction of the price of these big companies? Like the biggest company that wanted to publish me, 15,000 sold copies would have cost me 45 grand that year.
Yeah.
So she said, what do you charge them? Like, a fraction of that. And I went, she said, the next person that calls them, do our interview to find out what books they're doing and see if you're willing to take them on. Well, I was traveling speaker at that time. So I went to Victoria, Texas, which is south of Texas, 2 hours south. And I'm speaking at this event for first responders and veterans. One of the guy walks up to me, sits down next to me, and he says, I heard you're a publisher. And I'm like, how? What?
From where?
Hey, I was like, I'm a speaker and I'm a pastor right now. Like, and I'm an author, but I'm what? And he says, well, I looked you up before you came. Your God Manifest Church website has an advertisement for your book. And I went to your books page and I found your publishing company. I want to publish my first book with you. It's called Believe. And I was like, what? He goes, how much do you charge? So I told him, and he goes, how about you charge me 1,000 above that? Because that's not fair. The other companies are like 1,000 higher than you. And I said, okay, I'll charge you 1,000 higher. It's like God when God starts breathing on a company, which is amazing.
Yeah.
The clients will come and say, hey, I'd rather work with you and I want to pay you more, which is crazy. So I published his book. And then when I was finishing his book, a country music songwriter, his name is Rock Killo. He wrote for like Randy Travis, George Strait, like these major artists. So he has a lot of his songs are published now. And all of a sudden he writes me, he said, hey, your friend Debbie told me that you're a publisher. I would like to publish with you. And I was like, what? I'm like, who are you? I looked them up and I went, whoa, you wrote music for some of the biggest, I'm not a country music fan, but some of the biggest country music artists in the world. And he says, well, I want to write this. I want you to publish my story. And I said, okay. So from there on, we don't advertise. People just started reaching out to us. Like God's breathing on it. And so that's helping us fund our ministry. Like I built websites for some of the largest law firms now in oil and gas companies. I still do that on occasion. But it's amazing just how God's like, hey, if you become a pastor, I'll fund you. Well, I was hoping funding would come from like people donating. Like funding right now, 80% of our funding is coming from like random clients calling me, big companies calling me, law firms calling me, like saying, hey, you were the head of marketing for this like worldwide law firm. I want you to build my website. Yeah, and now it's crazy how God just breathes into it when you're not even expecting to become an entrepreneur.
No, for sure. I mean, that's beautiful. And that's amazing how it segued and your business started to kind of grow like that. What would you say are some great characteristics of a entrepreneur?
I would say first, fearless. Be willing. But they're also diligent. They're not afraid to work and to do things that are above their pay grade or below their pay grade. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, like you and I, are entrepreneurs. If we need to clean the toilet, we'll clean the toilet.
Exactly.
Because we have ownership. Like the owners will do anything from like cleaning the toilet to putting a new roof on to changing out a power plug. And I think a good entrepreneur has to be diligent, has to be hardworking, has to have no job too small, no job too large, but I also have to be perpetually a student. Like they have to constantly be learning. Like you're in real estate, you're constantly learning. You're staying up on the latest technology, up on the latest trends, up on the latest design, because if you're building real estate, you want to know what people are looking for now and what people are going to be looking for 3 years from now. Correct. So you're building within that. It's the same thing. Like I wasn't a writer after I got graduated and after I became a Christian. But when I was working for a major law firm, it was like the second largest law firm of the world. Like you look up the 5 largest law firm, I worked at the second largest. I think they're maybe number 1 right now. They all of a sudden asked me to start writing for them. So I wrote legal journals for them. And they won awards. And I was like, how is this dyslexic ex-Buddhist graphic designer a writer right now? But what God was doing in that moment was training me to write so I could write my book. Training me editing, training me public relations so I can do public relations for my clients. And at that time, had I complained, I think a lot of young people want things to happen instantly. I think patience is probably another virtue that us entrepreneurs have because we know we can plant the seed today. They ain't gonna grow sometimes for 5 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have to have that patience to really understand but keep watering your plant and really understand what your dream is. Yeah, keep watering your plant and understand what your dream is. Don't just uproot it because of a failure. Most entrepreneurs can tell you, I almost went bankrupt twice in my businesses. And I was like,
entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's part of it. And some of the richest people in the world have gone bankrupt multiple times.
For sure.
But that being fearless. But I can tell you, but as an entrepreneur, as a Christian, living biblically, like having biblical principles, be filled with the Holy Spirit, have there's wisdom in many counsels, or have many counsel in your life that aren't self-serving, that we can call each other and say, hey, I've got this great opportunity. I'm not sure if it's God. Would you mind praying for me? I have a lot of counsel in my life that I reach out to. Have mentors and also mentees. Like you're also training people up, you're raising up disciples, but you're also a disciple of your own, yourself as well. Like you never stop learning. Stay a disciple, but also raise disciples. Don't be afraid of competition. Like the competition that you're afraid of should be your friend that you should be partnering with. Those are some of the things I learned in the business where that made me successful, was just working righteously. Like here's an example. A client called me one time with my design firm when it was at this peak. I was making over $1 million. Cursed out my intern graphic designer, who was also at that time she was my full-time like receptionist. Cursed her out because she was working on the logo, and then hangs up the phone. I call him up and said, hey, why don't you come over? His first name was David. There's a lot of David, so I can drop that name. I was like, David, why don't you come over? I want to have a quick meeting with you with my entire team present. He walks in, sits down. I throw him a $25,000 check refund. And he's looking at me. My account had 30,000 in it. So, and my overhead was 80,000 a month. So I was like, this check was going to kill me. So I tossed him this check.
That's just literally how it is sometimes but go ahead.
Yeah. So I tossed him this check and he opens it up and he goes, what is this? I said, it's a refund check. If you ever, I said, I am not going to do business with you because you cursed at my employee. I said, I've never cursed at you. None of the employees have ever cursed at you, no matter how much you screamed and yelled. He was a pastor well, but he had a used car business too. And I said, if you want to come back to us, there's going to be a 5% premium on that. And I want you to do a public apology to people. He goes, forget you. And he leaves. A week later, he comes back with a $30,000 check in his hand. He hands it back to me, which is like, it was exactly what I needed to make to pay my employees.
We're going to be able to make payroll.
But what it said to my employee was, I got your back.
Correct.
You know, and that I'm not going to allow, if I'm the head of the business, I'm not going to allow clients to abuse my own people. And I think a lot of people will allow clients to abuse their people, and I refused for that to happen. And so that set a precedence. Now all my employees are like directors, like director levels, executive level, chief levels now. And they still reach out to me to this day. Even my publishing company, some of them graphic designers or creative directors, they'll go, hey, if you ever have a fun project, just send it my way. I'll give you a great deal. Like, because they just enjoy working with me, because they said I was a good boss to them. I was a good leader to them. And I think as entrepreneurs, we're leaders. We're leading the pack, but we have to lead with the right motives and right heart in building people. I think, to me, building people was more important than having finances. Of course, you need finances to make the world go round and make your business function. But when it came down to my people, or losing my own, I guess, my own credibility as a leader, I chose my people.
No, for sure. I think what you described to me is, great leadership, great stewardship, right? And I have this similar philosophy in protecting the people that work for you. Right? That's absolutely paramount, especially in high stress construction, renovations and stuff like that, where clients could lose a fuse. Luckily, I've had all very good clients, and I haven't had to deal with that. But I have this same philosophy. I'm willing to just give you your money back. It's not worth the stress, the exchange of the frustration, or you speaking to, my client, or I'm not client, but employees or people that work with me any type of way. That's just not going to sit well with me, so that was definitely great leadership there. So I just want to ask you, what is your philosophy as a business leader?
First, care about your people before your clients, and then number two, care about your clients. Like actually build relationships with them. I think a lot of people are looking at their employees and their clients as numbers. To me, they're not numbers. They're not a check. They're not a check I'm cutting or a check I'm receiving. They're people, and I think if I can treat them all as individuals, making time for them. I would tell you that I ran my own businesses the same way I pastor. Like, I make time for my employees. I make time for our people. And I really, I value the people aspect in leading each person. Like, if you were on my team and my wife was on my team, I would lead you all differently because your personalities are different. And I would encourage you to pursue the things that you're gifted at. And really understand that sometimes you may sign up for one role, but you may benefit in another role, and not be afraid to pivot. So a lot of times I'm willing to, even in ministry right now, because we still travel occasionally with my team. We're willing to pivot last minute, because if that's what God's leading and it's going to help one of my team members or my church members grow, to me, that's worth it, because I don't want to invest in the present but lose the future. So I invest in the present and the future at the same time. And I want to make sure most of my decisions really head that route.
For sure. You mentioned a few times the importance of having good people. So is there a specific sauce or strategy that you use to help manage people?
You know what? Managing people in the business side, you have to interview them first, right? I think so. I ask some questions that are outside the scope of just regular work. I'm like,
Correct.
hey,
Correct.
I'm like, fill in the blank. When I'm at home and have nothing to do, I like to, I ask these random questions because I think what they do in their personal lives, although it shouldn't have it doesn't show me their skills in a side. So once I get past the skills part, I want to know, hey, are you studying? Do you enjoy music? Do you have kids? Like, do you like I get on a personal level with them. Yeah. So it's the same thing as well. Like, managing people is, to me, is a lot of fun, because like my last company I worked with, I had 6 employees and I managed all of them completely separately. I knew some of them needed to sit and talk with me for 5 or 10 minutes every single day. Some of them rather talk to me once a week. They'd rather everything be done through email and text message. So I adjusted I adjusted the way I communicated with them that allowed them to be more efficient. Yeah. And in me being flexible in how I led, they in turn responded within 2 or 3 months of becoming more flexible into adjusting to what I expect. I think people respond when they see that you truly care, and they respond when they see that you're truly invested in their future and in their success.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with you on everything that you painted out in regards to managing and working, with people. You're definitely dropping a ton of gems on us. So one of the questions that we ask every guest is, I just feel like life is a great teacher, right? And there's a lot of lessons learned, right? What would you say is your best lessons learned in life and in business?
Well, family first. Here's a perfect example. Here's a perfect example of lesson learned. When my wife and I got married, I was working for a major oil and gas company. I was the head website developer for the entire company. I developed all the websites, and I had a side client that was really dropping me $15,000 to $20,000 extra every month. That's a lot of money.
Yeah,
so I'm building. He's an ex NFL football player. Ended up not to be a shady guy, but but as I'm building these websites for 6 or 7 months, I'm making a lot of extra cash. My wife and I are heading into our honeymoon, getting married. Money looked amazing. So right when we came back from marriage, from our honeymoon, he calls a meeting. I was building a dating website for him for college kids. It was like the sleek website. It was for dating, and it was talking about very conservative views.
Yeah.
Well, I came back and he handed my programming stuff to another programmer, and then all the photos were switched out to be almost like bikini shots.
Oh wow!
And like girls with belly shirts.
Did that? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm looking at it, and he says, "Hey, I've made a few adjustments to your website." I said, "A few? You changed it?" And he says, "And I want these lists of things to change." He gave me a list of what I was supposed to change. I looked at it and I said, "Wait, is this not an online dating site?" He says, "Well, it's for escorts."
Oh wow!
And he says, "My friends and I, we have a lot of connections with a bunch of escorts." And I'm like, "That's prostitution." And he said, "Well, I owe you $21,000 for this month's worth of work, anyways. But I'm not going to pay you until you make these last changes."
Oh geez.
Well, this is 5 minutes.
What a bind!
We're in a Starbucks right now, so this is 5 minutes into it. He paid me in a wad of cash, like everything was on the table. There's wad of cash, and I still filed taxes on it. I did everything up to par. Filed taxes on it. I still tithe on it. I looked at him. I stood up, closed my MacBook, shook his hand. He goes, "What are you doing?" And I said, "It's been great working with you, sir." And he goes, "If you leave, you're not getting your 21,000, Jonnathan." And I said, "Well, I just got married, sir, and I'm a minister. I honestly cannot justify working on a website that's promoting prostitution." Yeah. And I said, "And some of these quote unquote escorts are maybe doing so out of without their outside of their own will."
Yeah. And
he goes, "Absolutely. But what does that have to do with this money I'm handing you?" He holds up this wad. He goes, "This right here." I waved at him and I said, I got a programmer that will do that for you. I'm done. It's been great working with you. Goodbye." And I leave. So I call my wife, and my wife goes, "That was a fast meeting. Was he just paying you?" And I said, And she goes, "What happened?" I said, "You know that website I was building?" She's like, "Yeah." And I said, it's a website for prostitution, apparently. And I walked out. And she goes, "Oh, did he pay you?" And I'm like, "No." She goes, "Well, that's the husband I married. Don't ever work with him again." And I said, You understand he didn't pay me. I said, I walked out on $21,000 I earned.
Yeah.
And she said, "I would rather you not get $21,000 than you compromise our relationship and your relationship with Jesus." And I went, "Well, that's the woman I married." And
for sure.
So all of a sudden I went from this major 6-figure salary, it got cut more than in half, overnight within 1 weekend. I was like,
yeah.
Oh, well. So that was a major thing I learned, family and your integrity and your relationship with God. I just recently turned down a job with a potential prospect, major company. He's a major social media influence, but there's 6 or 7 cases against him that he sexually abused a lot of his patients. And this is a major contract. And I literally said, as a graphic designer, number 1, and as a pastor, number 2, I can't promote his business and send him more patients that he can victimize.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so my wife said the same thing. And she said, "I knew you were going to say that." And I said, I'm sorry, I can't take the project. And he was like, well, not all of them are like remotely true. I'm like, even if one is true,
yeah,
I can't be responsible for giving you a second.
mm-hmm.
So I had to walk away from that. And I think do not compromise on your morals. Do not compromise on your on Jesus as a Christian. Do not sacrifice your family to no finances worth sacrificing your family or your wife or those relationships for.
For sure. I couldn't agree more. I'm a big family guy. So
yeah.
How can people find you?
You can go to godmanifest.com. That's where my church. Are you going to Zen Design, ZIN designstudio.com? That's my marketing studio, or godmanifestpublishing.com. I'm also on Facebook, Jonnathan Zen Truong, and you'll find we have social media accounts on every major platform except, I think I'm looking at your screen, except Twitter. I mean, the TikTok. Yeah. We don't have TikTok.
Okay.
Yeah, we have Twitter, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, but we do not have TikTok.
All right. Thank you for blessing us. Thank you for sharing your story and diving deep with us, and also dropping so many gems in regards to business philosophy, people, patience, consistency. Being a student and always learning. You dropped a lot of knowledge on us, so I just want to say I appreciated that today.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity. It's all about transparency, and it's all about love. And when you love well, you'll succeed in life.
No, for sure. And thank you guys for joining us on the Pro Design Builder. It's not just about building a business; it's about building a vision and a life by design. Have a good day.